Hi, Sean Huckster here. Welcome to Sydney Swift's World. So this is the second compact that I made. The first one being the Computer Museum. This is the FDM printed version. The resin version is not at my house at the moment, but this is pretty much the same. I decided after doing that one, I was going to do an homage to an arcade I used to work in, and I did the decoration of. And this is the second one I'm doing, and this was all gray, and I constructed it just to make sure all the parts fit. After doing this, I made a few small adjustments, and now I'm ready to do the first full painted prototype. Now, I've pre-assembled a few parts. Like, for example, I put the door in, because we already saw how the door goes in from previous videos. It's just a panel nail. And then I also did a water slide decal of the Spot, which is the logo that I designed for the arcade that my friend created, and I did the interior decorating for. Who's in whose memory I've created this set. And this is the floor. Other pieces I put together, I placed all of the art on the arcade machines. So that's Tron, just as a few examples. That's Qbert. These are all ready to go in now. Everything else is just actually about to be assembled. First thing I want to do is, back behind here, I need to place this, because this is the office that's hidden behind the Tron machine, which, if you've seen Tron Legacy, Sam Flynn discovers his dad's old office behind the Tron machine at the old Flynn's arcade. He goes in, turns the power on, finds that there's some scrape marks underneath Tron, and decides he's going to open it up, and he finds a secret passageway, a doorway and a secret passageway down into his father's old office. So you'll see some little black bits here. That's where I just test fitted some of the painted parts. You won't see that when it's done. So the first thing we need to do is put the door in place. Now, the door, I painted the hinge to match the column. The door I left kind of gray, just because the door in the movie is rather nondescript. So we place that like so. And now we take, what I did is I took a paper clip, which is a plastic coated paper clip, and I cut down two of the long segments to make the hinges, the hinge pins. So this goes down in like so. Just gotta get that in, and then make sure that goes all the way down. And it's all the way down when this is basically flush. I cut it to fit, so that's fine. Should be just about right. Make sure the door hinges correctly and doesn't swing away at the bottom, because I'll make sure the hinge got all the way down. I think it did. Yeah, I think it did. Now, that is not the tightest hinge in the world. I could have made this hole a little smaller or the hinge a little larger. I'm just happen to be using this right now. Now, what we do is we take Tron, which is the next step. But now Tron is missing a little something right now, and that's the joystick. So I have to get myself some epoxy cement. And epoxy is notoriously slow to dry, but it really is a strong bond. So what I'm going to do now is take some epoxy cement, and I'm going to run a line of epoxy on this tape. Two lines, like one on side A and one on side B, and run the whole thing up. That way, throughout this whole project, I can be mixing the epoxy as I go and not have to mix it all at once, because that would cause it to just solidify, and that'd be no good to anybody. So what I'm going to do is smear just a little bit here, going to stir a little bit. And now what I need to do is, I only need a very tiny amount for this, because what I'm trying to attach now is so tiny, it's very hard to see. And I put a whole bunch of them in this bag. It is the kind of famous for its color, the Tron translucent blue joystick. So let's get that in place. And the best way to do that is to use tweezers. Dip it in a little bit to the glue that I've already stirred right here. And then apply it into the arcade machine right here. There's a little hole, and this goes right here. And because that's kind of notoriously slow to cure, I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes. But while we're letting that cure, we can move on. So the next thing I need to do is apply the base into the bottom. But there's some interesting little parts there, and I'll get to that now in a second. Now, I've already applied the hinge pin here, because that's a bit of a process. So now the top and the bottom shell pieces are already assembled together by that pin. But now we do the part in here. So what I want to do first is place this little cylinder that I have here into the gap that I've created for it, right here, just like that. Now what happens is this panel here, it has 2 footholds or 4 footholds, 2 on each side, for characters to stand, but also a little bubble here. This bubble will sit on this plastic, and that'll act almost like a hinge or something. It lifts this just off the ground just enough. This little ring here happens to coincide with the ring of the foothold, so when you push a character down, it doesn't tilt the plate. It actually sits on that little ridge and makes it solid, so you can put the character in here, into the plate, and not have the thing wobble too much. The first thing you have to do is take this, apply it in like so, get our footholds into place like so, grab this, and place this down into the thing, into the bottom half. But first we have to put epoxy into the corners to make sure this whole thing stays. So I stir up some more of the epoxy, and I place it. You know what, I don't have to place it into the inner one, I can place it on the outer one. A little bit here, and not too much, because if this is such a tight fit that they put too much here, it might squeeze up and you might see some leak up into the surface. I've had that happen before, so you really don't need very much. Just a little smear like that, and spread it a little so it doesn't, rise up and get up into the visible surface. And now we just put a little bit right here, a little here, and spread it a little. And now we take the panel again, make sure it's in place, and we don't touch the epoxy with it. And so that's fine. Now we hold it by the center, otherwise it's not going to stay. And we place it down into the bottom half, like so, and we press the corners. Now, because this is slow-acting epoxy, I am going to get clamps, and I'm going to place clamps on here and hold it. But I don't have to subject you to that. Now, when I clamp these, because of the rounded corners, I put a marble in each corner, and then, not up here, of course, because you can't fit it, but down below, I put a marble in each corner, and then I cover it with a paper towel to prevent scratching of the paint, and then I let that sit, and in about 5-10 minutes that will be completely cured, and I can move on to the next step. Now while we're doing that, I can actually perform this next step, which is to put the Tron machine in place, and attach its hinge, and that goes in the hinge just opposite of the doorway that I created. And then I take another hinge pin, which I pre-cut earlier, as you saw, and I take that hinge pin and slide it down into this hole, which is exactly the same as the other one, and that goes all the way down as well. And so now Tron will open, and the door will open as well. Now I figure this is cured by now, so let's get these clamps off. And now we do the same for the bottom, where we take a little bit more of our epoxy, stir it up here. Everything down here is now solid because that's been cured already. So we take a bit of this, and we place this in our corners. A bit more than that probably. Stir it nicely, get it all going. A little bit on each corner here. Smear it around. Again, you don't need a whole lot on each corner. We're going to clamp it down nicely and make sure there's not enough of it that can leach upwards and be visible on the edge. So that should do it. I think we had all the corners covered. Let's pop that into here, and we press, and now we apply the marbles and the clamps again. And now we let that sit and cure for like 5 to 10 minutes. I figure I'll take this little opportunity to plug someone. I started following a channel a while ago. The channel is Craftsman Steady Craftin', and recently he produced some stickers and a really nice pin. So he has a YouTube channel. If you look up Craftsman Steady Craftin', you could probably find that he may still have some of these left, and they're really nice. They're like sparkly, and they got SC for Steady Craftin'. And his channel's great. He is a guy who likes to craft things, and that's a man right after my own heart. So maybe you can support the Craftsman Steady Craftin', because this is a really nice pin, and I'll be wearing that this winter in my jacket, in my coat. So let's remove the clamps now. And our next step is to put the machines in the upper deck, because they're pretty easy. They just slot right into those little holes. So what I'm going to do here is take a very tiny amount of epoxy again, stir a little more. And what I'm going to do here is just place a little bit around the hole here. You really don't need a lot of epoxy, guys, just to let you know. You don't need a lot of it. Plus I made these slots very tight, so once they slot in, they're not going anywhere. All right, so what we have, first of all, Polybius goes up here. It slots really in nicely. Then zoom in a little bit here. And then over here we have our change machine. There we go, slots nicely all the way in. And down below we have Dragon's Lair down here. And slot that in. And down below here, get a little bit of epoxy on there. I want to get rid of that. Lastly, down here we have Space War, which goes right here. And we're going to let that sit for a while before we attack the lower deck. Now down below, I've laid out the machines and where they're going. Let's start with this corner over here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take Cubert and put a little bit of epoxy on the base down here. Sorry, down here. And that's really all you need. And that will slot onto the space that I have created for Cubert right there. And now we're not going to touch that. It's not really secured down yet. I'm going to just have to let that dry in place. So we take a little bit more epoxy, stick it on the bottom of Tempest. Likewise, very little, we place Tempest in its place right here. And we just leave that to sit. And as that cures, it'll just cure right in place. Next one, Starfighter, from the last Starfighter. Just a little bit down here. You don't need a lot. Fill that little gap a little bit there. And this one is a little bit front heavy, so I'm not quite sure how it's going to work. Luckily, the epoxy at this point is gummy enough that it should hold it in place while it cures. Next one, Centipede. That's good. Each of the machines is contoured to fit the curved wall at the bottom. And I did that on purpose. So we start now over here. Get a little bit more epoxy stirred here. Put a little bit on the bottom of Asteroids. And we put Asteroids right here. Then we have Crystal Castles. A beautiful machine, well constructed, well designed, and an excellent game, by the way, if you've never played it. It's got a lot of people don't really know how intense this game can be when you really get to know it. And then we have Missile Command. Place a little bit on the bottom of Missile Command and into the slot. Now Missile Command I modeled afterwards, so it's a little tighter. I might have to jam it down a little bit tighter. And had I done that with the other machines, I wouldn't have to worry about being very careful about letting them, sit there by themselves here. Now all of these machines have been painted, so buttons and dials and stuff are now fully painted. I've got the little coin machines up front painted and the coin returns all painted. And now, since like I said, the epoxy is kind of gummy, that's not going to be a problem. They're not going to fall over or anything, as long as I don't knock them. And then they'll cure in place. And for Pac-Man, we need to put epoxy up inside, but not on the outer edges, because this is going on a floor, and it's going to spin and move. So we must be very careful to put the epoxy only on the inside of the gap. We probably want to wipe away any that we might have on the surface to make sure it absolutely does not attach itself to the surface in any way. And that goes on like so. And I can actually lift it up just a bit. And that will rotate your footholds. And that is almost the entire machine. The entire playset, I mean. The only thing I have to do now is to attach the logo on the top, which I'll do after all these cure, and I can close it. And then when all these are in place and solid, I'll attach the logo, and that'll be it. Okay, let's wait for that to cure. And the last little detail is we take a little bit of epoxy here. We put it on here and here and spread it around. Make sure we don't do too much. And then we close the lid and pop our logo on here. Find the gap, find the little trapezoid that I created. There it is. And we hold it down. And that's that. And there is the absolutely finished Sydney Swift 1980s arcade, The Spot. That's it, guys. So for me and Sydney Swift's world, we'll talk to you later. Bye.